Hey my tech friends, thanks for stopping by. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Let's continue to grow this channel. Hope you guys enjoy this video. Hey guys, so today I figured we'd touch base briefly on Windows updates. And the reason why is because I've had questions inside of the comments section from subscribers specifically asking how do we configure Windows updates on desktops so that way they're not annoying. Now, I'm going to start off with saying that if you're running a Windows home operating system, you're going to need to upgrade that operating system first. There's ways to registry mod the system if you really wanted to go through all the processes to change the home version. But for the sake of actual control and ease of control of the operating system, just pay the extra difference and get the upgraded version to professional so you don't have to do this. Because if you have to go through the registry to make all these changes, it's a nightmare. There's a ton of different places you have to add them. There's a ton of different keys. It's just not worth the time to do it. If you're running home, unfortunately, I'm just not going to touch on that just because there's too many variables and there's too many things that could go terribly wrong if you don't follow them correctly. So that's not something I'm going to touch on. But on a professional operating system, I will touch on it, and I will show you how to configure your Windows updates so they're less annoying. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how this works. So if we look here in the registry, we have computer, HQ local machine, software, policies, Microsoft Windows. So we see the actual list here and how we have to go to get to this location, right? So if you want to freeze this here, you can to check it and look. Underneath here, we don't see Windows Update. It doesn't exist. And the reason why is because we haven't configured it yet. So in our group policy editor, which is local computer policy, administrative templates, and then it's Windows components. If we scroll down, we'll find Windows Update. If you need access help as to how to get to this, if you need to get to the registry, it's just right-click, run, and you would do regedit to get to the registry. And then you could do right-click, run again, and do gpedit.msc to get to the group policy editor. Again, the gpedit.msc will only work in the pro versions of the operating system. If you have home, this doesn't exist. That's not an option. So let me show you how this works, right? So if we're in the group policy configuration here under Windows Updates, and I go to any of these folders, it doesn't really make any difference. But for the sake of this, I'm going to go to Configure Windows Updates or Automatic Updates, right? So I'm in Managed End User Experience. If I double click on this thing and I just choose Enable and I don't make any changes whatsoever and just click OK, and I go back over into my registry, you'll see here we don't have Windows Updates listed. But if we refresh, we get Windows Update. So now Windows Update is going to have a configuration. And all of these configurations that you make changes to in your group policy configuration will add additional keys or additional dwords or additional values. It could be string values, it could be a variety of different things into your registry to control your Windows updates. So that's why I say I'm not going to touch on the Windows Home system because of all the variables that take place in here. However, if you have a Windows 11 Pro system, even as a trial key, and you download or you do your group policy configuration, you set all your group policy configuration, you could right-click on this thing and choose Export, and then you could import the configuration value into your Windows Home machine and still get the same controls. You just can't easily make those controls in the system because, again, there's a lot of different variables in here that when you make those changes, it's going to write to your registry in different ways. And I'm not going to go through every single one of them in order to trim down the operating system so that way Windows Home will work correctly with the values. But let's continue on this. So now that you know how this works, and let's build this out so it's less annoying on a workgroup machine. Okay, so the first thing I was obviously going to do is just make this full screen, the group policy editor, because there's no reason to have the registry open in the background now that you know how this works and where the controls take place. For the sake of this video, there's really no reason to do that. So we're going to start at the first, which is the legacy policy configuration. And for the most part, what these policy configurations and the legacy policies configuration are going to be are just the stuff that's existed since the beginning of time. So the option to do not display the install updates and shutdown option. By default, this is going to be turned on. There's no reason to modify it. Then there's the do not adjust the default options to install updates and shutdown in the shutdown Windows dialog. Again, There's no reason to touch that. For the most part, the majority of these things are probably not going to be anything that we need to touch. So let's just look at the ones that we can touch. We'll start at the turn on software notifications. Set that to disable. And then hit apply and OK. And basically what that's going to do is it's going to turn off the stupid pop-up box that takes place down here about different products and solutions and garbage like that may require an update. We don't need to be annoyed by that. So the next one we can do, which is optional, which I'll leave up to you, is the no auto restart with logged on users for scheduled automatic update installation. Now, this means that even if you're locked, in other words, you do the Windows key L to lock the screen, you're technically still logged into the system. The system will not reboot itself unless you're not logged into it. Now, if the system goes to hibernate or goes to sleep, that's a different story. But if you are locked and the system is configured for your sleep settings to not sleep, then the system will not reboot if you're logged into the system. So you can have that choice. Either you could say enabled, which would be don't reboot the system, I'm logged into it. Or you could choose disabled, which the system will automatically reboot at a scheduled time when you're logged in or not. It doesn't care. So generally speaking, on Windows, I would actually choose disabled, sorry. So that way it doesn't automatically, or rather, I would choose disabled so it does automatically reboot at a certain time. And I would set the time at like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. So that way, whether or not somebody's logged in or not, at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, the system will reboot itself and have the updates applied before the next person comes in the following day. Obviously, this changes in a business scenario than a home scenario. So I leave this up to you as to whether or not you want to set it to disable or enabled. But keep in mind, if you change it to enabled and you schedule it at 3 o'clock in the morning and you're not logged out of the system, it's just locked, it will never reboot itself for that update. So the next one that's optional, again, is the reprompt for restart with scheduled installations. And basically what that means is if we enable this, then you'll get a pop-up message that says the system needs to reboot to install pending updates. If you set it for like 30, then it'll wait 30 minutes before it prompts you again. And then you just hit apply and then OK. If you don't want to set that, then you don't have to set it. You set it for disabled. Okay, so the next one we're going to look at is reschedule automatic updates scheduled installations. And specifically what this means is how long after the system boots before the system looks for updates to apply again. Generally speaking, this is something that I would set for like 15 minutes or something to that effect. And the reason why is because you want the whole system to load. You want everything running before it starts to look for updates. So that way it's not slow. Because if it starts to look for updates, the moment the system boots and you have 15 different things that have to start up before the system's actually loaded, then it'll get boat anchor slow. So generally I would say enable, set it to 15 minutes, apply it, and hit OK. Okay, so the next place we're going to go here is we're going to go over here and we're going to go to Managed End User Experience. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at the list here and only configure things that make sense on a home workgroup machine. So the first two are really optional. But I'll say that if you go in here and you do the turn off auto restart for updates during active hours and you click enable and you say, well, I know that I work on my machine at home between, maybe you get home at like 5 o'clock and you're usually on it until like, 3 o'clock in the morning playing games, then between 5 o'clock at night and 3 o'clock in the morning, the system will not automatically reboot itself. It will stay up during those times. So after that, like during the time you're at work and your home computer sitting there idle, that's when it's going to apply the updates and reboot itself. So you would click enable and you would click apply and then you just click OK. So the next place we're going to go here is we're going to go to the enable features introduced via servicing that are off by default. And specifically what we're going to do on this is we're going to disable this. And the reason why, what this is going to allow us to do is if you get an update that installs a new service on your system, it will not automatically start that service. It'll only retain the service structure that came with Windows. So the reason why you want to do this is from a security standpoint. In the event that you get some kind of a breach or compromise and it installs a service and it does it under your Windows Update configuration, which has been known to happen in previous versions of Windows, if you have this stuff turned on by default, it'll automatically start the ransomware or whatever on your system. So it's a really dumb feature that Microsoft introduced in Windows 11, which really lowers your security. So the enable feature introduced by servicing set off by default, I would set as disabled, and then I'd click OK. The next one we're going to look at here is the always automatically restart at the scheduled time. So if we drill into this and we do enabled, you could set a timer for how long before somebody would have to save their work before the system would shut off. For this particular system, we're going to do enabled, and we're going to set it for 15 minutes, which is the default. Now, with nobody logged into the system, and it's still kind of just sitting there idle while you're at work, it'll wait 15 minutes before it reboots itself. In that 15-minute time frame, it may check and notify you whether or not you're there. So, for instance, if you have this set like this, and then I don't know, on a Saturday, you want to use it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's trying to reboot itself for whatever reason, you could have 15 minutes to basically save things and shut down and reboot, or just tell it no, I'm not interested, and then 30 minutes later, it'll prompt you that it has to reboot again. Okay, so the last one in this list that we're going to set is the configure automatic updates. And specifically, we're going to enable this, and we're going to change this thing to auto download and auto install. So right there, number 4, we have auto download and schedule the install. We're going to choose that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do install during automatic maintenance. And then we're going to set the day we want the updates to take place. Since we know that Patch Tuesday is a thing, and the updates come out on Tuesday, and usually Microsoft takes a day before they fix the updates they release that bricks your machine. Generally, I would say let's do it every Thursday. And then say, all right, well, we know that we're asleep at 4 o'clock in the morning. Let's have the system run the updates at 4 o'clock in the morning. And then we could choose specifically when to download the updates. So we could choose every week it downloads the updates, every first month, every whatever, right? So we could go through this configuration. But I just leave it as every week. And then I also choose to install updates for other Microsoft products. So like your Microsoft Office, your Microsoft Minecraft, your Xbox 360, any of the or Xbox One, whatever they're on now. Whatever the configuration is, this is what the for your Windows-based, any Microsoft product that you have, this thing will automatically download the update on your machine and update the product at that time. At 4 o'clock in the morning, every Thursday, it'll automatically download and install. So that way, it's not annoying because it's not going to do it during the day, during your active hours, or whenever you're actually using the machine. It's only going to do the updates when you're not physically sitting in front of it. But that means that the machine has to be kept on 24/7. That leads us to the next part, which is specify deadlines for automatic updates and restarts. And specifically, what we're going to do is we're going to say we're going to give quality updates 7 days and then a 2-day grace period, and feature updates 7 days and a 2-day grace period. And then we're going to hit apply. And basically what this means is that if your machine is left turned off, and you only turn it on at 4 o'clock and you use it till 3 o'clock and you shut it off at 3:15 every morning, and you never leave it on for it to actually apply the update, eventually it's going to get to the point where it's going to be like, hey, listen, you have to update this because we're missing security patches. So it has a built-in safety that it will only update if it's not left on. Okay, so now in a workgroup mode, obviously we don't have a server, right? There's no wsus server, so the configuration you would think under the manage updates offered by Windows Server Update Service would not be something you would need, but that's not necessarily true. So in this configuration, what we're going to do is we're going to first go to client-side targeting, and we're going to actually disable this, and then hit OK. And what that's going to do is it's going to stop Windows from sharing updates between desktops. And the reason why you want to do that is because if you have 2 Windows 11 machines on your network, and one gets an update that, say, was junk and bricks the machine, you don't want that same update applying to the new machine. You want that machine to look for the Microsoft update for the same update that maybe has a patch or a fix in it that doesn't cause the same blue screen of death issue. So you never want to use client-side targeting unless you're in a situation where you have like a dial-up connection and then like 15 machines that all need updates. Then use the client-side targeting so that way you could target a specific machine, but you would configure the policy on that specific machine to wait a couple extra days, so that way you have, a buffer before you have any issues with your Windows updates. So the last one in this configuration we want to set is the automatic updates detection frequency. And the reason why is because you really don't want your system continuously barking, constantly running all day long, looking for updates. All that's going to do is cause a lot of traffic, and it actually slows down your machine because it causes the service to kick off every hour to look for updates. I think by default it's every hour. So what we're going to do is we're going to enable this and change the interval on this to, 12 hours, and then hit OK. And that means every 12 hours the system will look on the internet for updates versus every hour and continuously just cause non-stop traffic from the service running looking for updates. Okay, so now let's go into the manage updates offered by, or rather from Microsoft, let's go to the manage updates offered from Windows Update. So that's the last place we have to go in our Windows Update configuration, and there's only a couple configurations in here we have to set. The first one, which I'm going to recommend you set, is to not include the drivers in the Windows Updates and set that to enable and apply. And the reason why is because you don't want Microsoft's driver replacing your manufacturer's driver. So if you run like an NVIDIA card, or if you run like an AMD-based video card, you don't want Microsoft's driver replacing your NVIDIA configured driver, because it's going to cause issues. Same thing with your printers. You have print drivers installed, but Windows Update will replace your print driver with the WSD driver, which will cause a slew of issues with your printers. So that's not something you want to run if you could avoid it. Now, there's certain manufacturers like Lenovo. All of their drivers are Microsoft drivers, which is why I never recommend buying a Lenovo product, because you have to wait for Microsoft to fix the driver because the manufacturer out of China doesn't release drivers anymore. So you'll end up in a situation where Microsoft may release an updated driver that bricks something on your machine, but you can't replace that driver because the only person that makes the driver is Microsoft. That's why I would tell you, if in an OEM situation, always check the website first to see where the drivers actually come from. If you could download the drivers from their website, typically they're in-house manufactured, or they're manufactured by whoever manufactures the board and the components on the board. But if you have to download them directly from Microsoft, generally speaking, that machine's going to be a problem all the way through its life. So with that said, do not include drivers with Windows Updates. You don't want to do that if all of your drivers come from Microsoft Windows Updates. And one of the only ones that I really know 100% all of their drivers come from there is Lenovo. And that's, again, why I would avoid Lenovo products with a 40-foot pole. All right, so let's go on to the next portion of this configuration here so we could, move along. And that's going to be our select the target feature update version. Now, this is where it gets interesting on Windows 11. Is we all know, I think 23H2 is the latest build. I don't know what the next one is or when it's coming out. But generally speaking, if we only want to run 23H2, even when the next version comes out, we want to run it for, like, say, a couple months before we get the next release, the next upgrade version of the Windows 11 platform. Then what we would do is we would go into this target feature, we would do enabled, we would choose Windows 11, and then we would say 23H2, and then we just hit apply. So now this particular system will only update to 23H2 Windows 11. It won't allow you to go to Windows 12 when it comes out. It won't allow you to go to 24H2 when that is released. It will only use the 23H2 build. So that's something to do to manage the actual build, so you only have limited revision. So in other words, if you know that your video card becomes end of life in 23H2 and you don't want to upgrade to the latest version until you replace the video card, even though the latest version's coming out, this is where you would do it. You would just put that version in there and it would force the machine to stop. Now, if you're running like 20H2 of Windows 10, you could go into that same location on Windows 10 and you could say, all right, well, I want to run 22H2 and just put 22H2 in there, and the system will automatically upgrade itself to 22H2 when that update is downloaded. So at this point, that's our configuration. There are additional things we could do in here. For instance, if we wanted to, say, go into the enable optional updates, you could do that here. I would suggest not doing it just because, again, you're trying to limit what it does, the time it does, and how it works. But if you set your configuration as it is here, what it'll do is it'll only download and install the updates at 4 o'clock in the morning on Thursdays. It's not going to bark and annoy you all throughout the week and day because it needs to run updates, because you're defining specifically when those updates are going to run and install on your machine. And that's the configuration for your Windows updates. Now, once that's done, let's dip over back into the registry, and let's take a look at the registry configuration now that we have all our configs in there. Okay, so to get to the registry, we'll just right-click on Start, we'll go to Run, and we'll choose to go to regedit. And hit Enter, and Yes. And then we're going to go specifically again to our HKey local machine, software, policies, Microsoft, Windows, and then Windows Update. And for the sake of this, I'm just going to do a refresh, even though I don't think it'll make any difference. Okay. So in here, these are all the configs now that we just put in place. Specifically, our driver configuration is here. So we have our Windows Update, drivers and quality update. We have our configured grace period, the deadlines, allow temporary controls, active hours, start and end, the target release version, target group enabled, release version info 23H2. And if we go down into the AU, which is the automatic updates, we can see all of our configurations in here as well as our release and launch and everything. Now keep in mind, if you really wanted to, you could go to one of these and pause it and do this manually on your own machine in your home system. And again, manually on your own machine on your home system with your configurations. Just make sure everything's case sensitive. If you wanted to do that, that would set it exactly how we just set it on the system. So 4 o'clock in the morning, Thursday, would on the updates. And then after 7 days, if the machine's not on at 4 o'clock in the morning on a Thursday, it will automatically tell you it has to run updates while you're logged into the system. So it has a fail-safe built into it. But disabling Windows updates on Windows 11 at this point is not a good idea. And the reason why is because your Defender updates run off of the Windows updates. So if you have products like Microsoft Outlook, Office 365, and you use the Defender product to scan for malware, viruses, or even fix your spam and phishing, you don't want to disable it. That's a bad idea. So generally, this is what I would tell you to do, is to follow these configuration steps and standards, so that way you could define when you want the updates to apply on your particular machine. And again, if you want to take these configuration settings on your Windows 11 home machine, you can add them to your Windows 11 home machines and control it. You can do the same thing on Windows 10. There are some variables in Windows 10, but for the most part, all of these configurations should work in 10 as well. Hopefully you guys found this video helpful, and hopefully this helps you guys out in the future with Windows 11 updates. Thanks again.